Hi there, welcome back. My name's Adam, I'm the pastor at Living Springs, and I hope you're having a great time wherever and whenever you're watching this, because we do this, put it out on a Sunday morning, but also it'll be on our YouTube channel. So just hope you're enjoying. Why don't you comment if you haven't already, where you're watching from, say hello, and this is going to be hopefully the last Sunday, as I've already mentioned, the last Sunday that we pre-record our services. So hopefully from next week we will be live. Anyway, today we're going to be continuing our series called Marks of a Disciple. And I want to ask you a question. Have you ever heard, how often do you hear the word fellowship? What springs to mind when you hear the word fellowship? Do you consider it an old-fashioned word? Is the word fellowship relevant to our lives today? My aim by the end of our time together is that we will have looked at this word fellowship. We will have chatted about how important it is for us as believers, as followers of Jesus, but also for society as a whole. Fellowship, I believe, is one of the marks of a disciple. And it's the fourth mark that we've looked at in this series. We've already looked at three other marks. We've looked at how the early disciples were devoted to the teaching of the apostles, to the breaking of bread, communion. And last week, Nigel spoke to us so beautifully about prayer. These marks are found in Acts chapter 2, verse 42. And it says the following: they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. And so, if we're going to get an understanding of this word fellowship, then we're going to need to do a little bit of Greek. The Greek word translated in our English Bibles fellowship is koinonia. Koinonia. It appears 10 times in the NIV New Testament. 9 times it has a kind of positive sense, and then once it appears with a negative connotation. But we need to grasp the richness of this word koinonia. It has a meaning beyond the word fellowship. It implies partnership, sharing, participation. It finds its root in the Greek word koinias, where we find words such as common property. So when we look and see how the early followers of Jesus, the early disciples, devoted themselves to fellowship, they were doing life together. The word fellowship, that concept, had a real depth behind it. And isn't that what people are looking for today in the 21st century, in 2020? So many people are looking for a depth in relationship. We live in a world where isolation, where loneliness is a huge problem, both inside the church and outside of the church. Being a follower of Jesus doesn't mean that we should just come together on a Sunday. It means actually that we should be sharing life together. Now, the danger is here that you could be watching this, listening to this, and thinking, well, Adam's going to say, we should come out of the world, we should be just all in the church. That isn't what I'm saying. And we'll explore that as we go on today. We need to be in the world, but not of the world. We need to maintain relationships, friendships with people who aren't Christians. I'm not inviting you into some kind of cult. But fellowship is an important part of being a follower of Jesus. But let's just go back. Let's go back to those first disciples. Why was fellowship so important to those early Christians? Let us just set the scene a little bit of where Acts 2 is taking place in history. Jesus had just been crucified, he'd risen from the dead and had ascended to heaven. The disciples were setting out into new territory, so to speak. Jesus had left them. Yes, they'd been empowered by the Holy Spirit. Yes, they had seen great numbers of people reached. People had responded to the good news, but they were still very much in the minority. They were going against the prevailing culture. They would continue to face persecution. Many would be martyred. They would be dispersed. Fellowship, doing life together, would help them as they faced these many challenges. Mutual support would be vital. Fellowship would be vital. Fast forward to today. If you are a follower of Jesus, then you are going to be called, and you should be being, counter-cultural. That doesn't mean that we disagree with everything that happens, because that wouldn't be right. There are good things that happen. But being a follower of Jesus means that actually we are going to be counter-cultural. We are going to find it difficult to agree with some of the philosophies, some of the beliefs, some of the practices of the world we live in. We live in a world that tends to try and promote looking out for itself as looking out for ourselves as the major driving factor. We live in a world that seems to give permission if it doesn't hurt anybody else, or if it feels good to me, then it's okay to do. Being a Christian, being a follower of Jesus, means that we're going to be counter-cultural, means that we're going to be trying to talk to people about a different way of living, the proper way of living, I'm afraid to say. That may be a bold statement, but we are going to be that counter-cultural. So with that in mind, let us look at what doing life together, what fellowship in the 21st century should look like. As I've already said, it doesn't mean cutting yourself off from the world. I think that's the biggest problem with many churches today, with many followers of Jesus, many Christians, is that we go to church, we find out how great it is, we make friends, and we, over time, find ourselves coming out of having relationships with people who are non-Christians. Now, in some cases that might be the right thing to do, because there are some people who may be in your life right now who are not a good influence on you. Who, when you're with them, you find yourself doing things that you wouldn't normally do. And it may be right at those examples, or in that example, to come out of that relationship. But we've actually called to be a light in the world, and we can't do that if we live in a holy huddle. We need to be out there. We need to be in the world, but not of the world. We need to spend time with other believers, but also with those that don't go to church, with our friends that don't go to church. My best friend, I have two best friends. One of them, Paul, may be watching. He's my best friend, possibly. And actually, I've just been reminded I've got three best friends because Ruth is just pointed at me and going, what about me? So I have three best friends. But my oldest best friend, in the sense of the one I've known the longest, doesn't go to church. But I know he would walk through a wall for me and for my family. So we're called to be in the world, we're called to have those relationships. But we've got to be wary. But then when we fellowship with Christians, it's good. We spend time with other believers. It doesn't have to be, we're going to gather as a group of Christians and we're going to read the Bible. No, it can be social. It can just be hanging out over a barbecue. That's becoming more allowed this weekend, I think. But sharing a meal together. Just doing everyday life together. Being friends. But also I believe it's being part of a life group. And I want to just pause here, spend a little bit of time here today, just talking about life groups and their importance that they play in this part of fellowship. You see, it's quite clear from Acts, if you read Acts, that Christians were involved in each other's lives. So they were doing that hanging around, they were doing that sharing meals, but also, I think life groups today give us a little picture maybe of what it was like 2,000 years ago. So life groups are an opportunity to share life, to share challenges in a safe place. We have 3 life groups currently in Living Springs Community Church. They all meet online at the moment. You know, as this is being recorded, we are still gripped by the pandemic COVID-19. And so our life groups are meeting online, but we have 3. And they're safe places for people to share hurts, successes, challenges. They're a safe place to pray together, to study the Word together, to share needs. Our life groups need to be, continue to be places that embody the richness of that word koinonia that we looked at the start. They need to be a place that really embodies the fullness, the glory of true fellowship. And we are, I think our life groups are getting there. I know of things that have happened in the church where maybe people have lost loved ones and that life group has rallied round and been praying for them and supporting people. I want our life groups to be true, deep embodiments of what fellowship means. And so right now, if you aren't in a life group, why not? Why not? Don't wait till we can gather together as life groups and not do it online, because I'm afraid I think that time may be still a good few months away. Join a life group today. They're an hour and a half of your week, and they are beautiful places to experience the richness of fellowship. I'm talking to myself as a minister, as your pastor. It's hard for me to be in a life group. I have a group of friends in the church that I would relate to and do elements of life with, and I'm part of a ministers group that meets at the moment monthly, and we sometimes share. I need to grow even more in that area. But what are some of the other things? Let's come away from life groups for a moment. And let's talk about what other things that having good fellowship will help with. Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." By doing life together, we can learn from each other. We can grow. You know, within the church, most things in life will have been experienced. I'll caveat that. I don't think any of us have ever lived through a pandemic before. But most things that we will encounter in life, financial troubles, marriage troubles, children troubles, health troubles, all of those things, there will be people that have walked that path before you. And so we can learn from each other. We can be sharpened by other people's experiences. We can learn from other Christians how to share their faith, or how to pray maybe. Iron sharpens iron, so another person sharpens another. And to do that happens in some respects through preaching, but the real traction, the real rubber hits the road moments is in doing life together. It's seeing how people deal with certain issues in real time. I want to read also from 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 11. I'm going to read just a portion of verse 11. I'm also going to read from the Message version because I think it helps to just expand a little bit. It says, so speak encouraging words to one another. Build up hope so you will be all together in this. No one left out. No one left behind. That is a picture, I think, of what fellowship should look like. No one left out. No one left behind. Sometimes the danger is that we get cliquey, isn't it? That people maybe walk into a group. You know, have you ever walked into a party? Me and Ruth, I remember last year we were invited to a party. It wasn't within the church, it was kind of within our little estate. And we walked into a party and we didn't know anybody other than the two people that had invited us. And one of them was over chatting to their friends and we were kind of like, how do we break into this social group? It felt a bit awkward, but luckily I'm no shrinking violet and I'll talk to anybody. And so we kind of started to have those conversations and Ruth joined in and we kind of came onto the edge of that group. But in church life, in life, I don't want anybody to feel left out or left behind. Now, does that mean that you're going to be like best buds with everybody in the church? Look at me, best buds, best friends with everybody in the church. No, doesn't mean that. But I don't want anybody to feel on the edge, left out, marginalised, isolated. I don't want any of those things. No one left behind. We want to be in true, proper fellowship. It is our responsibility for those of us that are mature Christians is to look out. Actually, no, not just for mature Christians, for all of us to look out and to draw people into fellowship, into friendship, into conversations. We need to be encouraging each other, building each other. That happens in fellowship. We need to be looking out for each other. We need to be running this race called life together as a family. Do you know I think it's an African proverb, and it says that it takes a village to raise a child. I think we could look at the church and say something along the lines of it takes the whole church to help mature Christians. We need to do it together. It's not an individualistic thing. This journey of faith, this journey of life shouldn't be done alone. It should be done in true fellowship, part of the family of Christ. So, to conclude, I want us to remember the richness behind that word fellowship. Fellowship, true Christian fellowship, embraces whole life, the good, the bad, and the difficult. We do it together. We are in it together. We may not get on with everybody, we may not be best friends with everybody, but we're in it together. True fellowship understands that value of doing things together. And to end, are you in a life group? Are you fellowshipping, true fellowshipping with other Christians? And are you helping other people in their journey? God bless.